From Afghanistan to Yemen, from Sudan to Ukraine, from Israel to Nigeria, the world is turned upside down, torn apart by wars, revolutions, protests, unprecedented humanitarian crisis in a political climate that embraces autarky and tramples on democracy. Let's take the example of Israel, where citizens may perhaps agree with President Netanyahu on the Palestinian issue, but who, for some weeks now, have been organizing violent protests because they see him as a president turned despot. On the extreme right, who is determined to pass laws to limit the powers of the judicial authorities that have so far kept the government's work under control. And the protests show no signs of abating. Add to all this other tragedies of human manufacture, such as the virulent climate changes, and you get a really dystopian world. On the major issues afflicting our planet, we interviewed Lisa Temple, an arbitrator, expert in family law disputes, who can be defined as a heart-centered leader. A very articulate woman, Lisa holds uncompromising views on the evil forces and tendencies at work in today's world. Good morning, Lisa. Thank you very much for coming in this interview.
Good morning,
of all the evils that you have heard in my initial introduction that impact the world and humanity, which is the worst one, in your opinion?
My answer to that will be unusual. To me, the worst evil in the world is envy of human spirit, because envy of human spirit means that there can be no gratitude. Where there is no gratitude, there is a black hole of greed. So what we're experiencing at the moment in the world is the realization that money, which actually doesn't exist in reality, can never fill desire. And the people who treat the world like a game board, they are lacking in gratitude, in contentment, and they truly resent humanity, human life, love, children, women, and freedom. And they are nothing but a black hole, and they will never be satiated. But on the other hand, that's an invitation for each one of us to look at the difference between our desires and our needs, because they have told us since birth, we are not home, we are not safe, and we are not enough. And that's a fundamental lie. So looking at the dystopia that we're facing at the moment is also an amazing opportunity for each and every person, depending on how high they are on the pyramid. But like the Titanic, the water is rising, to ask ourselves, are we living an authentic life? And then to have courage, which comes from the heart, instead of bravado, when the system tells us we can be brave. But courage is a risk, but it's not really a risk when you consider how the cost of cowardice, which is what we're seeing at the moment.
So, in other words, you are accusing a kind of distortion of humankind, the ethics of life, in other words, correct?
Well, I am. I think that people have been disempowered. And in the old Star Wars movie, Yoda was asked, is the dark side more powerful? And he said, no, it's quicker, easier, and more seductive. We have been groomed as a people to want an instant gratification of our desires and confusing them with our needs. And in a sense...
Tell me, Lisa, what is the remedy to that?
The remedy to that is very simple. If we bring up our children and ourselves and we stop and ask ourselves right now at this moment, what do I have? What do I want? What do I need? And what am I afraid of? And what would I do if I wasn't afraid? That in billions of tiny steps, when people begin to stand in their truth, when they begin to have the courage to speak up and say, what I'm seeing with my eyes is not what I'm being told with my ears. And simply learn that no is a full stop. No is a full sentence. Concetto, everything in life is contract law. We are consistently being made offers and acceptance. And we have seen over the past number of years that coercion does exist. But if you are an authentic person, you will know that no is a full stop.
Well, thank you very much, Lisa. You have been very philosophical, and I appreciate that because I do like philosophy myself. So until the next occasion where we can talk about more practical things, arrivederci. Bye-bye.
Arrivederci. Grazie mille, Concetto.
Prego, prego. With regard to the Ukrainian war, we talked to Oleksii Rukhlenko, who is a Ukrainian researcher and joint professor in the School of Medicine in the University College Dublin. Good morning, Oleksii. Thank you for accepting the invitation to talk to me about the Ukrainian war. There is a prevalent opinion amongst observers that the supply of weapons to Ukraine from the West has been sufficient to create a kind of certainty or resilience and determination in the Ukrainian to beat the Russians. But the supply has not been sufficient enough to actually win the war. So what do you think about it?
Good morning, Concetto. So of course, I'm not a military person to judge it directly. I don't go too much into details, but in general, the supply was enough to stop Russian army, but not enough to free the occupied territories. And although it was quite extensive, and every Ukrainian is absolutely grateful for that supply, in the conditions which are now, the paradigm of NATO would not allow an assault and freeing the territories because Ukraine has no dominance in air. So Ukraine now has to fight in the conditions in which actually NATO army would not give any counterattack. Just they would simply wait until they have prevalence in the air, and Ukraine has to do it without it. So that's the difference, and this is why actually, although the supply was quite extensive, it is really not enough. But the point is here that if the war finishes in any intermediate state, like at some point without freeing all the territories and without completely disabling Russian army as a force, it will not be an end of war. It will be simply a pause. So, and this is not because Europe does something wrong or Ukraine does something wrong. This is because current Russian regime thinks this way. They think they now urge for peace, not for the sake of peace, but for the sake of getting pause to prepare for the next round. And this must be clearly understood in Europe, I think, that every request for peace from Russia now is really a request for give us more time to prepare for the next round of invasion. And this is why it's not easy to end it up. And this is why Ukraine is still fighting, not because of any other reasons, but just because of understanding that every intermediate step will not be enough. It will be simply continuation of war later. So that's the situation we're living now in. So unfortunately, Ukraine doesn't have any other chance just to continue fighting because any delaying will result in things getting even worse.
Okay, thank you very much, Oleksii. Thank you.
Thank you, Concetto.
We end today's newscast with a musical note from Rory Costello, an Irish street artist we filmed in Grafton Street, Dublin, while with his wonderful trained voice, he sang an Italian aria. Il tuo fedel sospiro c'è crudel tanto